Hello and welcome back to Lovett Film. Today's guest is Eric Johnson, the actor who played Whitney in Smallville. He was in Supernatural. He was in Vikings. He was in the 50 Shades movies. He was in a movie most recently with Martin Cove, aka Crease. Eric has done a lot of different things. He's such an interesting actor. I just interviewed him there. He loves Ireland as well, so go on, Eric. It was cool to talk to Eric, and I can't wait for you to hear the conversation. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Well, Eric Johnson, thank you so much for coming on to Love and Film. I mean, I've seen you in a million different things. Starting off with Smallville. I'm a big fan. As you can see, we have a Smallville ambience in the background here.
Nice.
Of Clark's room, just to set the tone. But Smallville, your character, Whitney, was a pivotal character in the setup of that show. Like, for people who don't know Smallville, I don't know where you've been. It was one of the biggest shows in the history of TV. But, you guys came out with such a different take on Superman. People would have thought Superman, it's traditional Chris Reeve, Superman Lois Lane. But who would have thought Clark Kent as a teenager, and then your character, Whitney, who was the stereotypical jock at first, but then you realize, he's quite layered. There's more to Whitney,
Yeah.
And he was with Lana and stuff like that. But how did you get involved with Smallville?
Smallville came around at an interesting time. I think a couple of years before this, it would have been like 2 or 3 years before Dawson's Creek kind of hit the waves and made a big splash. Because it was a very popular show, popular teen drama, and a lot of the other networks were sort of chasing that demographic, and so there was this new interest in doing good television skewed towards a younger audience, which I think had typically gone towards an older audience. And the director of our pilot for Smallville was a director named David Nutter, who is an incredibly accomplished director, has an Emmy for his work on Game of Thrones. Lovely individual, but responsible for launching some pretty incredible television. And every pilot season, every year they have the new television shows. It was all sort of done within 3 months of each other. But I had auditioned for him for multiple years in a row for other shows, and we just had a good rapport. So then Smallville came around, and of course, like, the first thing your agent does is like submit you to the largest role that's there, and I think the first role I actually read for was Lex, which was, I was far too young at the time. I think they were looking older. Not that Michael's that much older than me, but I was 21 at the time. They were looking for sort of mid 20s, late 20s. And then David Nutter, who had known me, had me read for Clark, which I'm like, I don't think I'm right for this. But he believed in me as an actor. So then when they got to the role of Whitney, I knew I had a champion and an ally in David Nutter, who just was an incredibly supportive person of me early in my career. And amazingly, it all worked out, because you never know, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and that's sort of how it all started. And I knew early on that we were doing something special. It was a special take. It was unique, and the superhero mania, which we've all sort of been through over the last 25 years, it was really in its infancy. The only sort of more mainstream that had happened at that point was the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man came out the same spring we were shooting the pilot for Smallville. So this was sort of a new area for us to go. And I just knew we were shooting the pilot, and I'm like, this is going to be a big show. We were doing big things. And like, people have come to me afterwards, and just like where we were, it was kind of the show that people, I think, needed at the time too. It was like this wholesome coming of age of that put that journey of what does it take to become Superman, not just be this superhuman person, but what does it take to become that person with that sort of grounded moral center, and the challenges of not just doing the right thing, but also growing up. So I think it was very fertile ground that hadn't been explored, and the take on it by Alan Miles was, I think, just fantastic. So it was, I felt like it was a built-in success ready to go.
You know, it's funny that you mention Alan Miles too, with the connection with Tobey Maguire. Because am I correct in saying they wrote Spider-Man 2, right? I think
I
the
think
second
they, I
Tobey
think they,
Maguire.
I think they, I think
So
they
so
might
they
have
had
done.
a big part in pushing the superhero
They
infancy
did.
into where it is
They
now.
did.
It's
Even now
fascinating.
with their work on Wednesday, like they're
So
doing
good.
fantastic. Yeah, they're doing fantastic work. Always have, and have been prolific for a long time. So they've already always had their finger on the pulse of what's going to resonate with audiences.
Big time, and Smallville in particular has that timeless sort of ability for people to relate to the show
Hmm.
because it's about a coming of age. Everyone has trouble when they're that age, teenager,
Yeah.
high school, and then there's the love
Mm.
triangle with you and Christian Crook and Tom Welling's character.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Tom and Christian in that season?
I mean, we were we were all so young, and I mean, I was just, I mean, I love what I do. And, I got when I got onto the show, I'd already been working for 10 years. I started as a kid, and had a lot of passion for the process, and uh, I kind of come at things with a bit of golden retriever energy. Like I'm just like throw the ball, I'll run after it all day long. So it was, again, we were doing really fun big stuff. Flipping trucks and explosions, and so I just every time I was going into work, I really enjoyed myself, and they were really good people. Everybody was the first season, I think, was really challenging. I think, like, internally we called it Hugeville and not Smallville because we just were doing all these huge gags and never seemed to have enough time to be able to do them. And certain episodes were hard to get completed and kept getting things pushed along the line. But I mean, Kristen was fantastic. I mean, you've seen her career. Like, I think she's basically been on television since then. And you know she's such an intelligent and thoughtful person, that there's definitely some similarities between Lana and Kristen, though thankfully with a lot less trauma because of all the things that go on in Smallville. We were joking about, like, how many traumatic brain injuries did the cast of Smallville get, getting knocked out by whatever.
Whitney was in a car crash in like the second episode, wasn't he?
Yeah,
That looked
there's a lot
painful.
of a lot of time in the hospitals in that show of people getting
Yeah.
hurt. So yeah, no, it was just, again, a lot of sort of wide-eyed, um excited to be there. I think nervous for what it was too. There was a lot of attention on Kristen and Tom and Michael. The cover of Entertainment Weekly. If you remember, Mad Magazine, Smallville was on the cover of Mad Magazine, which was like, so it really was pretty intense those early days, but they handled it so well. In success and attention can go very sideways depending on who you are, and they were just really grounded, great people, so it made it that much easier.
And things were different back then too when it comes to just like the craft of actually filming an episode. Like I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that car crash. I heard you say online it was some story about, say, Tom just picked you up straight away. There was no wire work, and it was just like
No wire work. Yeah, just picked us up, and of course, we're shooting on film too, so everything has this added stakes. Like, you can't just, with digital, you can kind of just roll and roll and roll, and hope you get it. Then you're setting up cameras and burning film, and so stunts had like a different kind of feel to them. But we were doing big gags. We were doing big gags for TV, especially for the WB/CW network that we were on. Like, it was sort of like a tentpole show for them. Yeah, and yeah, and Tom, again, would just had to just be Superman sometimes because the technology wasn't there, or the time wasn't there to make it easier on him.
I think there's so much room too for. I mean, if they were gonna do some kind of a sequel to the show, for your character to come back, because I mean, spoiler alert, the finale was a while ago now. But I mean, Lana didn't end up with Clark in the end. You know, she there was
No.
this whole fix where they couldn't get together, and Whitney's character never died, right? So I
Oh
mean,
no, he did very much
but he
so.
did.
Oh
Well,
yeah, season 2, he got blown up real good.
oh, that's right. That's
So
right.
yeah,
Well, like it's Smallville. People die, they can come
you
back.
never know.
Yeah,
I always joke that the way to have Whitney come back would be he was buried in a kryptonite grave, so it's able
yeah.
to zombie Whitney would come back and
They could
start
find a
fighting
way.
crime. Yeah,
I heard
there's always a way in Smallville.
there's always a way. I mean that's what I
Yeah,
say. I mean, someone like me who's seen the show, you could
mm,
just forget that person died because they come back, you know. But
yeah.
I heard recently that Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum were working on an idea for an animated sequel. I mean, there's
Yeah.
definitely room for every character in Smallville to come back in some shape or form. If that was presented to you, say, hey, we need you to come back as Whitney as this
Mhm.
new character, would you be interested in doing it?
Oh, I think absolutely, especially if it was working with those guys. I think the what's really fascinated me, because you have no idea when you're doing it. I mean, next year's the 25th anniversary of this show hitting the air. And for me to be here still talking about it, and then talking about it to a generation of people who discovered it later, like didn't watch it when it first came out. We have people who watched it when they were in high school and now have shown it to their kids, and so it's got this whole new generation of fans. Um it, it it's been really humbling of just what this show means to different people. And so, being able to sort of continue that on and add to the story, I think would be great fun. And of course, getting to work with those guys again, like even just getting to go and do conventions and spending that time and getting to hang out and hear more stories about things that I wasn't involved in is a lot of fun. So yeah, of course, if there's a world where Whitney lives, I think there's more to do there.
I think that's what it needs too. Like if they're gonna do a sequel in animation, you got to bring like the core of that first season back, to get the feel of Smallville. I personally, as a
Yeah.
fan, I'd love to see that. I know too. You came back in the fourth season, right? It was like the beginning of an episode. It was this new
A little
season.
flashback.
Yeah, yeah. Where it was,
Yeah.
if I recall, it was the episode where Clark was trying to dunk Lana into the big thing of water, and it was probably weird coming back after it was about 2 years, and you came back.
Yeah, it was interesting because there was a scheduling issue, and I was working on another show and had to get to the airport for 2 o'clock that afternoon. And I said, like, look, you've got the morning, but I can't miss this flight, and I've got to get to this other production. And they're like, yeah, yeah, no problem. We'll get you done. And so then I get there bright and early, ready to go. And then they're shooting everything else, but not shooting the piece that I'm in. And I'm getting stressed. And I'm like, and I finally, I mentioned it to the first AD. I'm like, I got to go. And he's like, yeah, 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 we'll get to you. We'll get to you. And then it's like 1:45. And I'm like, guys, I gotta walk. I can't shoot this. And then panic, and everybody's going crazy. The director runs over. What are you talking about? You gotta walk. I'm like, I told everybody. He's like, nobody told me. So he had no idea that I had a hard out at 2 o'clock. So we end up shooting all of that in the span of, I think, about 11 minutes as we ran around, got that so I could get in the car and race to the airport and make my flight. The director was Pat Williams, who I ended up working with and later, and we laughed about that. He ended up becoming a good pal of mine. So it's just the chaos of making TV sometimes, but it was amazing what we could accomplish in 11 minutes when we really needed to.
I mean, from the perspective of a viewer, I never would have guessed you got all that in 11 minutes.
Yeah,
That's so cool. I
yeah.
mean, I was about to say as well. I know Jensen Ackles was in that season, but you weren't in the
Mhm.
scene with him. But later on, you did end up in Supernatural, right?
I
In the
did,
fifth
yeah,
season, yeah. I remember. I'm
yeah,
a fan of that show too. I remember you were Sam's best friend, who turned out to be a demon the whole time, and he was
yeah.
that was really cool too. What was it like working on Supernatural?
It's commonly known within the industry that to be a guest star on a show is really not a fun job, because it's like you're the new kid at school. You show up, everybody's sort of in their little group and pocket and knows everybody. They've all got their inside jokes, and you're the new person there. And nobody really gets too attached to you because they know they're going to get another guy or another gal the next week. So they're like, yeah, you're here, say your lines, get out of town. So it's usually not the most comfortable job. Supernatural was the opposite of that. That was the best guest star experience I've ever had. Um, Jensen and Jared and the producers on that show were so welcoming and so kind and so fun that it was just a great place to go. They made you feel like part of that team immediately. And again, the role was super fun. Playing a demon is a good time. And then getting to work with those guys was a blast. So it was, and the other thing is there was a lot of the crew on season 5 of Supernatural that were actually on season 1 of Smallville. So I knew a bunch of people there. So yeah, it was like, in terms of guest stars, it was about as good as it could possibly get. And yeah, it was a great time. Those are two wonderful humans who are great at their job and treat everybody really well.
Sorry for the interruption. If you're enjoying Lovett Film, why not show your support by subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell notifications, giving this video you're watching right now a like, and leave a comment, good or bad. We can take the abuse. Help us grow so I can keep giving you these interviews. Interviews like stars of Red Dead Redemption 2, actors in movies, Dexter Resurrection, you name it. Do follow our socials on Instagram. It's all just at Lovett Film. You find us very, very easily on Instagram, TikTok, and of course, if you're watching here on YouTube, we have it on YouTube. We have Spotify too, and Apple Podcasts. Now back to the interview. That's amazing that it was just such a good experience. While looking up things you've done, I recognize your voice straight away in the video game I played, Star Wars Outlaws. You played Jalen
Nice.
in that. That was super interesting, thinking, like, you're an actor, you're doing live action a lot of the time, but now you're in this completely different medium where you're in a video game. Talk us through what that was like. Was it performance capture? Was it a booth?
Yeah, we did performance capture for Star Wars Outlaws, and I'd worked with Ubisoft before on a video game called Splinter Cell Blacklist, where I played Sam Fisher, and it was all performance capture, which was new to that franchise because they had Michael Ironside voicing Sam Fisher up until that point. So big, huge shoes to fill, or try to fill. And I was introduced to that technology. You're wearing the suits, you got your little ball strapped onto you, got the helmet with the facial cam, the lights, and all the motion capture equipment. And it's kind of like going back and doing theater, because everything that you're seeing is kind of imaginary. Your high-tech console is made out of 2x4s and chicken wire, and the guy in the back who's pointing a gun at you, well, the guy beside him is holding a pool noodle as reference, as opposed to like an actual rifle. So there's a lot of imagination that comes into play. So I loved learning the technology side and watching it evolve over the last 15 years, as everything's gotten smaller and more lightweight, and things have it's gotten easier in a lot of ways. The immersion gets better because they're able to show you so much more. You can do so much more in real time and have better references. So that's a blast. But to even be into the Star Wars universe now is pretty cool. Like when you got a character page on Wikipedia is definitely a highlight.
Were you a fan of Star Wars before taking on the gig?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like, growing up in the 80s,
That's the
like,
best
you're
time.
definitely, like, you're gonna be a fan of Star Wars. And to play a cool character like Jalen, and I actually just did an audio book, which is it's sort of the Jalen ND5 origin story. So Jalen and his droid ND5, we meet them in Star Wars Outlaws. But this book, Low Red Moon by Mike Chen, is the origin story of them. So I think that comes out in the new year. So it's a fantastic book. And if you're a fan of that game and of that world and timeline, it's really it's an exciting ride.
I'll definitely read that. It's so interesting to me. Anything to do with Star Wars, and in particular acting in that medium where it's, as you said, like theater. Like, people don't realize when it is performance capture, every single movement that character's doing, that's not animation. That's like, say, something that you would have performed. So cool.
Yeah, it's like watching the technology and how they incorporate that and then seamlessly move it into gameplay. those cinematics have gotten so much more immersive into the games, and the blending of the difference between what a cinematic is and gameplay has gotten so much better as well. And you look at games of where story and performance is so nuanced now, where it's not just voices anymore and sort of stick characters, kind of characters moving very wooden without their mouths moving, to things that you see in God of War and Last of Us, and all the fantastic work that's going on out there. It's an exciting playground to play in, I'll say that.
Big time. And you were saying you were acting since you were very, very young. I mean, you get into these huge projects like these 50 Shades movies you're in. You're in two of those. I mean, what was it like going into that project, working with people like Dakota Johnson? I imagine that was huge budget.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all the same. It's amazing how little changes in the process. Whether it's something like Vikings or Supernatural or Smallville or 50 Shades, it's all the same process. It's usually the difference of time, of how much time do you have to complete things, how much money can go into building the sets. um like for 50 Shades, we were actually able to travel to France and shoot in France, which I was convinced that I had one small moment there, where I'm like, that's going to be a green screen on a studio. There's no way they're going to send me to France for that. And then they sent me to France. So that was fun, which is a much bigger deal where I'm from as opposed to where you're from,
Yeah,
because that's an 8-hour flight and
that's
across
insane.
the
Yeah, it's
water,
about
as
an hour
opposed to,
here.
yeah, you'd be like, you're just, what do you mean go to France? Not a big deal. It's much further flight. So yeah, but I mean, being a part of that, which has such a, it's interesting. I think Smallville is a little bit of preparation for that, because you're getting into something with a very excited and active fan base of people who have a love for the franchise, even beyond the movies. So the navigating the fandom, it was a lot at first, but it was also very exciting, like having that attention. We were shooting in France, there was people camped out around where we were shooting. And I think Dakota and Jamie kind of felt like the Beatles in that moment, because people were outside sort of screaming for them. It was wild to see that reception, and just to be embraced and welcomed by such a passionate fan base was a lot of fun.
I'd say so. And from talking to actors on this podcast we get on, I mean, I'm talking from complete ignorance. Like, I'm not an actor, but I find what you do really interesting. But of course, there's ups and downs, right? Like, it's from
Hmm.
what I hear, it's one of these jobs where one minute you're the king of the world, next minute it's just
Hmm.
rejection, rejection. And
Yeah.
what would you say to people who are wanting to be an actor? As in, what can they expect? I imagine it's a tough job to have at times.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a certain amount of resiliency I think you need to maintain. And if you're looking for um, validation, it's really hard, because the industry owes you nothing. You're guaranteed nothing. And if you're looking for it to tell you that you're good or you have value, it could be pretty empty and hard on the soul. But if you love performing and you love doing it, find a way to do it. It doesn't, as I've gotten older, it doesn't matter to me so much the size of something, but the process of doing it and who you're doing it with. That the process of making it is more important to me than the end result, because so much of that is out of your control. You can't control whether or not something is going to catch fire and be like Smallville, where you're talking about it 25 years later, or it's going to get out there and not necessarily find its audience, or not find its audience for decades later. You just don't know. So the thing I take from it is just, I focus on the things that I can control in it, which is, how do I show up that day? And if you're passionate about it, just stay in it. I know so many people who um find their version of success later. There isn't a definitive timeline. It's not like a sports athlete where you've got this window of
Yeah.
of about a decade. It's a much longer tail. And so staying with it, staying curious, and staying passionate, I think, is probably the key to letting some of those troubled waters roll off your back.
Big time. And I read as well online too that you're going to be directing a web series, right? Or you already have and it's
No,
coming out?
that's actually been that's I've been trying forever to get that off my IMDb, because it's just that's no longer in the works. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
yeah, the thing about is, like, I've always got things that I'm working on, and you're trying to, it's very much like putting a puzzle together.
Yep.
And you get pieces in play, and then a piece falls apart, and then you get another piece, and it's constantly these moving pieces. So whenever somebody gets something greenlit and is shooting something, that to me is such a win. It's such a big part of it, because it's so challenging, especially in the economy and where things are today. It's very hard.
Yeah.
The money's tighter, people are risk averse, they want sure bets, which there's no such thing. I think we can all point to a movie that has an all-star cast and has everything lined up that just doesn't do well, or falls a little flat. Like, you just don't know. There's this weird alchemy to it all. So I've always been passionate about the industry. um I kind of say that I'm not a very interesting person, because this is sort of like all I do, and
No, you're very interested. For
it's
someone
what
from
I
Ireland hearing about it, working on Smallville, I mean, that's super interesting.
yeah, but it's like I just love the business. I love the creation, the pre-production, production, and post-production, all of it. Like, I find it um incredibly rewarding, and I love it as an art form. I know, a lot of what we're doing is entertainment, and people like to call it content now, but as a collaborative art form of people getting together and putting their creative problem solving on something. And uh it's so collaborative, and I think that's one of the things that people don't quite understand. It's just how collaborative it has to be from its inception, because there's just no, directors get a lot of praise, and as they should, and lead actors get a lot of praise, as they should, but the collective that's behind them to make that a reality is huge. I mean, with a director, you can have a vision, but it's on people to bring it to you. And sometimes your vision isn't possible, or something changes, and then it becomes a best idea wins kind of situation. And that decision is on your shoulders. So you say yes to that. You have to own that. And so you get credit for it, but it really becomes about the collective. And I love passionate people working together to solve a common problem. It's a really great piece of humanity. I'll say it's a cool place to play.
It is just such a cool job, I mean, from
Mm-hmm.
our perspective over here, I mean, getting to pretend to be somebody else and being in these
Mm-hmm.
amazing stories. I mean, your job is a cool job, and I find it fascinating.
I'll tell you, it like, as a kid, playing pretend is fun. I don't know if you ever, ran around the playground pretending you were in a movie or show, right? So that it's kind of the same thing, only you have everybody around you supporting it. Like, take Vikings for an example. They build this whole village. It's populated with goats and ducks and fires going around. There's a boat in the pond, and they give you a sword and all the stuff, and everybody else is all wearing the same thing, and they're like, okay, now go play pretend. Now, if you're 8 or 9 years old, that is the greatest thing that anybody could give you. And so I often feel like I'm just back in that space of being that 8 or 9 year old, but I have incredibly talented people all supporting it around you, making for the best possible game of pretend you could imagine.
Big time. And I can't thank you enough, Eric, for coming on here. I know you don't have all day, you have things to do. It's just so interesting for us to hear what
Mhm.
you do for a living and what you do, I mean, with your craft, and how you take acting seriously, and how, you demystify it for people like me who just, I'm like, this is so interesting, like how you guys put this entertainment together. So yeah, it was really, really nice to meet you, and thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I have to say that I left um, a piece of my heart in Ireland, and I can't wait to come back. I loved my time there. My whole family did. And
did you film Vikings over here?
Yeah. So it's definitely it's got a special place in my heart. I can't wait to come back. The people are incredible. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody there.
Thanks from Ireland, Eric. Appreciate that.
All right. Take care.
See you.
Cheers.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.